हम्म क्यों खाना नहीं खाया? Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to this special session. Today we'll be discussing about equilibrium. The concept related to equilibrium we'll be discussing here. But before we start the session and go ahead, hi everyone. Uh, some important announcement. I think I'm audible. Can you please reply me in the chat whether I'm audible and you can see me as well? I'm fine, dear. All right. So before we move ahead, an important announcements to be made for you guys. CA Iconic program, uh, Unacademy started in collaboration with Yashas Academy for CA Foundation aspirants. Now, the highlights of this course I need to tell you about. In this, there will be live mentoring platform that will come up very soon, wherein one-to-one personal coaching will be done for the students. There will be one-to-one doubt solving sessions. Your answer sheets will be evaluated, and obviously you will receive printed books, and every session will be done by the industry. I mean by the industry expert, and obviously there will be Discord channel wherein you will be able to discuss about every topic that has already been covered in these sessions. So weekly tests will be there, study material, unlimited access. It means the recorded session will be available for you, and obviously the courses will be structured as per the structure provided by ICAI. All right, clear? So it's coming up very fast, very soon. So you can experience a whole new level of uh, you can this is going to be a revolutionary change in how online classes are going to is going to happen in the future. So please ensure to subscribe to Iconic subscription, and you can use the code Yashas Live additionally. So for 24 months, if you take, it will be 2,417 per month, and for 12 months it will be 2,917 per month, and for 6 months it will be 4,167 per month. All right, and there is also a combo subscription for CA students, wherein CA foundation and intermediate subscription one at the same time. All right, for that you'll have two course, you'll be saving around 3,000 rupees, and for 24 months you'll be saving around 4,180. And if you take for uh, foundation iconic, then you'll be saving around 6,650 for 12 months, and for 24 months you'll be saving 11,000. So please do not miss this chance. Only 3 days remaining. All right, and there is also a CA Foundation Notes and Scholarship program which is about to be launched with a scholarship pool of 1 crore rupees. Subscription is free. Enroll, you can enroll, use Yashas Live as the code, and from 19th September onwards, that is from 12 p.m. onwards, it will initiate. All right, let's go to the concept here. So in this special session we'll be discussing the concept of equilibrium. All right, concept of equilibrium. Generally, when I say equilibrium, I'm talking about market equilibrium. A lot many questions are asked from equilibrium concept in your foundation, and this is one area when students sometimes face difficulty because they are conceptually not clear as to what should be the answer here. So let's understand this thing, and remember this concept of equilibrium will be only applicable in a free market economy wherein the government is not interfering in determination of price of any particular commodity. Alright, so it will work in a free market economy. Works in a free market economy. What is a free market economy? Generally we call it as that market wherein there is no interference of the government in businesses, where there are no interferences of government into business decisions. Decisions taken by private businesses. Alright. Now what is equilibrium? From the equilibrium you can end up getting around 4 questions straight away from here. So when I say market equilibrium, let's consider market with an E. Alright, is the point where demand is equal to supply, or we say aggregate demand is equal to supply. There is where demand is equal to supply. Now tell me, is it a possibility that ever equilibrium will happen in an economy wherein if suppose 1 lakh units are produced for any particular commodity and it's supplied and exactly 1 lakh units is the demand? Is it a possibility? Now if you think just like in a layman's way, you will think that, sir, how is it possible? It's not possible that market will ever achieve equilibrium, but now it is possible. See, you must have seen a seesaw. Alright, 2 kids playing in a seesaw in a park. It doesn't matter what is the height of each of these individuals. It may be different, it may be same. So when one person is applying the force and then it's going down, the other person will go up. And then when the other person who is higher up, if he applies the force, then he will move down and the other guy will go up. Now in the process of transition, don't you think at some point in time the seesaw will come on a level plane and again there will be difference in weight? So this is how the market operates. It is a situation wherein when the demand is rising, the supply may increase, but when prices increases, the demand will fall and supply may also eventually start to fall. But in the process of one rising, another falling, at some point in time they will become equal. Alright, they will become equal. So that's the point of equilibrium. The market will not remain forever at equilibrium. Alright, most of the time the market will remain at disequilibrium. But when the transition is happening wherein demand is increasing, supply is decreasing, supply is increasing, demand is decreasing, just like a seesaw, momentarily the market will achieve equilibrium. Let's give you an example so that you can understand a diagram that I'll draw in a while. If suppose there are 4 sellers in the market, A, B, C and D. There can be hundreds of sellers. I've taken an example of 4 sellers. Now they are producing any particular commodity, let's say a pen or potato chips or mobile phone, whatever, doesn't matter. Now every business have a different investment. Some businesses are big, some businesses are medium, some businesses are small, some are micro business, depending on the investment going into that business. For example, soap. Soap is manufactured by big companies also. Soap is also manufactured by cottage industry. Alright, investment is different. Hindustan Unilever has got a lot of investment. ITC has got a little investment, but when you're talking about cottage industry, very less investment is there. So let's say A produces 50,000 units of soap. B produces, let's say, 30,000 units of soap. Alright. C produces 15,000 units and D is a small seller. He is producing and selling 5,000. Alright. So it means I can say the total supply in the market total supply is 1 lakh units. Total supply is 1 lakh units. Now let's assume for now that demand is also 1 lakh. Let's hypothetically assume for now. Why I am assuming this, I'll explain it to you in a while. Right? So 1 lakh units. Now suppose E, a new seller enters the market. Now when I say free market economy, it means entry of any new seller will be free, meaning there will be no restrictions or barrier imposed by any existing sellers. Alright. So let's say E ends up producing 40,000 more units. Am I audible to you guys? This is special session for any student who are appearing for foundation in the month of December. For any foundation student it is. In the current batches I've already covered these topics. So these are the additional topics, some of the topics wherein sometimes students face problems. So I'm taking up this topic. This topic is related to equilibrium. Tomorrow again I'll be taking one more YouTube session, and YouTube sessions and special sessions are free for everybody, whether you are an Unacademy student or not. So tomorrow I'll be taking up the concept of revenue. Alright. So 40,000 units it produces. Now total supply, tell me, total supply, it increases to 1,40,000 units. So don't you think now I can say that supply is in excess of demand? Do you think just because new seller has come up in the market and produce more than what people demand, people will increase their demand? No. When a consumer is buying a product, he is not concerned about how many sellers are producing this commodity. A person is buying the product based on his own utility that is going to derive from that particular consumption of that product, what is the satisfaction that is getting, and how much of money he is paying. He is not going to bother how many sellers are there in the market. So people are not going to be bothered and increase their demand just because new sellers have come into the market. So since E has produced more, do you think E will have only unsold stock? No. Everybody will have unsold stock because overproduction has happened in the market. It means A, B, C, D and E also, they all have unsold stock. Unsold stock or inventory is bad for business because the money has gone in the manufacturing of these goods. If you don't sell it, you will not be able to recover your cost of production and the profit, and you will not be able to make payments towards the factor input which has helped you in the production of these goods. For example, wages, salary, direct, indirect costs and other things. So what they will do, these sellers, when they have more stock left, they will start decreasing the price. But tell me one thing, when one seller decreases the price, do you think other sellers will increase the price? No, he will also decrease the price. So competition will start among the sellers to get rid of their inventory, to get rid of their unsold stock. Alright. So this is the only way they can create demand. So what happens now? You remember the law of demand says when the price of any commodity goes down, the quantity demanded goes up. And the law of supply says when price goes down, the supply will decrease. But they have unsold stock. So as they go on decreasing the price decreases, don't you think quantity demanded will start to increase in the market? Now people are getting discounts, so they are buying more. They are now motivated to buy more because they can buy more, their purchasing power is increasing, they can buy more number of units at the same price, right? Purchasing power is increasing, real income is increasing. So what they will do, the demand is going up and up and up. But sellers had unsold stock. All these sellers had to decrease the price to boost up the sales, to increase the demand. Do you think in the next production cycle, will they produce more number of units or less number of units? The answer is less number of units. Because they knew that if I produce, let's say 50,000 units, I have been able to sell only 40,000 units. It means 10,000 units was unsold stock. If I again produce 50,000, again I'll have unsold stock. So they will in the next production cycle decrease their supply. So what is happening? As the prices are going down, quantity demanded is increasing. But suppliers had unsold stock. To clear the stock, the price are decreasing. So law of supply will obey. So the supply is going to go down. Now moreover, when the supply is going down, because the price they have to give you discount, the businesses have to give you discount, do you think any new seller enter the market when the prices are falling? No. People start a new business only when they are getting a higher revenue from the sale of their goods and services. In a falling market, nobody will enter the market. In a rising market, people will always try to enter. So what will happen? New sellers do not enter the market. Existing sellers are decreasing their level of output, and small sellers like D, they will not be able to take the heat of the competition and they have to shut down their business. So what is happening? As the prices are falling down, the supply is falling down, but quantity demanded is increasing. At some point in time, don't you think they will come at equilibrium? But what happens after that? Demand becomes in excess of supply, because people will buy more and suppliers are not increasing their sales. They are clearing their unsold stock. But at some point in time when the demand is more than supply, don't you think the existing sellers will now find, who have been able to stay in the market, they will find an opportunity? When they know that demand is in excess of supply, they will start slowly increasing the price. Then you will say, sir, demand will fall down. No problem, dear. The demand is 3 lakh units, they are producing 2 lakh units. So even if they increase the price, the demand may come down from 3 lakh to 2 lakh 90,000, 2 lakh 80,000. So still they will be able to meet up the entire demand, because demand is still in excess of supply. So they slowly start to increase the price and increase the supply. But with the increasing price, the demand starts to fall down. But still, due to excess demand, the supply will consistently start to increase. New sellers will enter the market, existing sellers will increase their sales. Demand is falling due to rising prices, supply is rising, and again equilibrium is achieved. And again disequilibrium, it means again supply is more than demand. So again the same process will be repeated. So in this way, the demand will continue to go up and down, and the supply will also continue to go up and down. At points, they will achieve an equilibrium. Clear? Now how can I represent this into a diagram from where largely the questions are asked? You see here, if suppose I take, this is the price of the commodity and this is the quantity. Now along the y-axis I'll take both demand and supply. So this quantity represents both quantity demanded and quantity supplied. Now I'll draw the supply and demand curve. Let's say this is the demand curve, downward sloping curve. Let's mark it as DD, and this is the supply curve. This is the SS curve. Now at this point, what you see is the equilibrium that is happening. At this point, the equilibrium is happening. So let me mark this point here. This is P0, this is Q0, right? So equilibrium is there. But as the price decreases, let's say now price decreases from P0 to P1. Now at this point Q0, I can say that quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied. Alright, at Q0, what I can write here as, at Q0, we have quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied. So that's why I can mark this point as equilibrium. I can mark this point as an equilibrium, E. Alright. Now when the price falls down, to P1, when I extend this line here, you see it will hit the supply curve at this point. When I drop this line here, don't you think now the supply is falling from Q0 to Q1? So I can say, I will back it as QSS1, because it is related to price 1. Alright, and when I extend this line further along the demand curve, now what happens here? This is your QDD1. So don't you think here now at a lower price demand is in excess of supply? So I can say at Q1, at Q1 right, at Q1 we have demand in excess of supply, demand in excess of supply. So what is basically is happening is that as the price reduced at this point at E, quantity demanded was equal to quantity supplied. Now as the price decreases, what happens? The demand, you expand on the demand curve, you come from this point to this point. When you move down on the demand curve, it leads to expansion in demand. Quantity demanded increases, and that's what the law of demand says. With the fall in price, quantity demanded increases. So the quantity demanded increases from Q0 to Q1. Whereas quantity supplied, what happens? Quantity supplied decreases from Q0 to QSS1. So quantity demand increases from Q0 to QDD1, quantity supply decreases from Q0 to QSS1. Clear hai? Just let me find out the eraser. Alright. Now let's say price increases. Now let's say price increases from P0 to P1. Price increases from P0 to P1. P0 to P1. Now you see here, if I extend this line here, what happens here? This hits the demand curve over here. When I drop down a line here, you see, here is your P2 ले लो, sorry. Here is your, I can write it as QDD2, quantity demanded. And when I extend this line further along the supply curve, you'll find it hits the supply curve over there. So when I drop down a line here, you see on the quantity line, where does it hit? Here I can say QSS2. So now when I compare between QSS1 and QDD1 and QSS2, don't you think supply is more than demand? Because with the rising price, it is profitable for the sellers to supply more. So as they increase the supply, demand is falling down, but till the time demand is in excess of supply, the sellers will not bother about increasing the price, not bother when they are increasing the price. They will continue to increase the price. Don't you think when Maruti can manufacture only 10,000 car in a quarter, but the demand is 20,000 car, even if Maruti increases the price, the demand may fall down to 18,000, but it can produce, maybe it can stretch from production of 10,000 to 12,000. It cannot stretch it to 18,000. So even if the demand falls down to 15,000, will it bother Maruti? No, because still the demand is in excess of supply, but the demand will continue to fall down as the price increases, and the sellers will enter the market. Existing sellers will increase their supply as well. So what happens here, when you are at this point now, you see from this point, as the price increases, you see what happens, the demand, it decreases, right or wrong? If suppose initially you are at this point here, at this point, so as the price increases, the demand moves from this point to this point. Alright, from QDD1 to QDD2. Alright, so it means demand is changing, it is falling. When you move up the demand curve, up the slope on the demand curve, it leads to contraction in demand that happens due to increase in price. Whereas supply, it was here. What happens to supply? Supply increases from QSS1 to QSS2 here. So supply is increasing and demand is decreasing, because that's what the law of demand and law of supply says. Law of demand has an inverse relationship to price. law of supply has inverse direct relationship to price. Clear? All right. So I can say that at Q at Q1 ने यहाँ पे P1 लिखना था, I'm sorry, at Q1 लिखा है, और let me rectify it. It should not be at Q1, it should be at P0 here at P1, and then at P2. At P2 what we have is there is supply is in excess of demand. Now this way demand and supply will continue to change due to change in the price. As the price changes, the quantity demanded and quantity supplied will continue to change. And one increases, other decreases. At some point in time they will achieve equilibrium, that is point E. Market will remain at equilibrium if all the factors affecting both demand and supply remain exactly the same. That is the income of the people, the taste and preferences, the future expected change in price, the price of complementary goods, the price of substitute goods, they all have to remain same. But that is not a possibility. So one or other, many of the factors will change in the economy that will force the seller either to increase or decrease the price, due to which the demand is going to increase or decrease depending upon whether the price has been increased or the price has been decreased. All right, clear? So this is how equilibrium happens in the market. Let's move further. Now many a times, now here we have seen that first the price is moving, then there is a change in quantity demanded and supplied, due to which equilibrium is achieved, and then economy will again achieve disequilibrium. Alright, economy will achieve disequilibrium. But what happens, initially price do not change, but there is a rightward or leftward shift in the demand or the supply curve or both these curves, which will, what will be the outcome of this? Will it affect the price and quantity in the same way? Will the price and quantity will change in the opposite direction, or will they not change at all? So around 2 to 3 questions from here also they are going to ask you. So shifting of the curve. Now before we go into shifting of the curve, let me explain you the basic concept with regard to shifting. You see, when there is a change in the price of the same commodity, and I am talking about the demand curve, there is upward or downward movement along the slope of the same demand curve. Let's say, for example, if I am taking this case of price here, I take demand only, supply will be the same, only the slope is positive rather than negative. Quantity here. Now if I have taken the price here as P0 and quantity demanded here is Q0, we know the law of demand says that when the price increases, quantity demanded will decrease, and when the price decreases, quantity demanded will increase. So let's say the price decreases from P0 to P1. P0 was the original price, and you see the quantity demanded will increase from Q0 to Q1. Likewise, when price increases from P0 to P2, the law of demand says that when the original price is P0 and original quantity demanded is Q0, with the increase in price, the quantity demanded will decrease. So let's say it decreases from Q0 to Q2 with the increase or decrease in price. When I join these 3 points, the edges here, what I'll get is the demand curve. We say that it has a negative slope, or we also say that demand curve slopes downward to the right or from left to right. The negative or downward slope or negative slope is due to inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. So you see here, if I mark this point A here, when the price decreases, we increase the quantity demanded increases from A to B. So downward movement along the slope. And when the price increases, then quantity demanded will decrease. So there is a contraction from A to C, upward movement. So up movement along the slope will lead to the contraction. Down movement along the slope will lead to expansion. In case of supply, is just the opposite. In case of supply, is just the opposite. That is, if I have to draw the supply curve here, supply and price relationship is that there is a direct or positive relation. So if this is the price here, if the price here and it is the quantity demanded here, and if suppose initially P0 was the original price and Q0 was the original quantity supplied, when the price here it increases from P0 to P1, the quantity supplied rather than decreasing, it increases from Q0 to Q1, because when market is offering a higher price to the seller, it will be more profitable to sell more units. It will increase the revenue of the seller exponentially. And when the price falls down from P0 to say P2, then quantity supplied will also fall down from Q0 to Q2. Now when I join these 3 points here, what you get is the supply curve. Alright, so we say this is an upward sloping, or we also say positively sloped supply curve. We also say it slopes not downward but upward to the right. Now remember one thing, you see in both these cases, if I say that there is a change in quantity demanded, that is happening. Why this change in quantity demanded is happening? What is the reason for the change in quantity demanded? The reason is the change in price. So any movement along the y-axis which represents the price, they will lead to movement along the x-axis which leads to quantity demanded. So the quantity demanded along the x-axis is changing due to change along the y-axis. Likewise here also the same logic. If there is a change along the x-axis which represents quantity supplied, it is due to the change along the y-axis which is due to the change in price. So the reason why quantity supplied is changing from Q0 to Q1 or Q2, because there is a change in the price from P0 to P1 or P2. Now, what happens if can there be a change in demand without the change in price? There the shifting of the curve comes. When I say shifting of the curve, can there be change in demand without a change in price? Yes, it is a possibility, and that will lead to rightward or leftward shift in the demand curve or the supply curve. For example, if say this is the price here, P0 remains constant, a straight line, because the price is neither increasing, decreasing, nor it is increasing. So it's a straight line. Now if suppose if I consider here the price and here the quantity, you see initially I can draw the demand curve DD0 here, and this is your Q0, but there can be a rightward shift in the demand as well. It means the rightward shift will lead to increase in demand. So right shift causes increase in demand. Now how can rightward shift happen? Now from Q0 to Q1 it increases. Suppose this is a demand for luxury goods or normal goods. When my income will increase, will I not buy more of these luxury or goods and normal goods? Now I am taking a decision to buy more, not because there is a change in price, because the price is not changing. Here in the previous diagram you can figure out that along the y-axis, along the x-axis, if the quantity demanded is changing, or quantity supplied is changing, it is due to the change in price. But here the price is remaining constant and still there is an increase in demand. It means one thing is certain, that demand is not changing due to change in price, it is changing due to other factors. I have seen an advertisement wherein my brand ambassador is endorsing a product I will buy. Positive changes in taste and preferences. This is the demand curve for cars. Price of petrol decreases, people will buy more car. So any factors but not the price. Likewise, demand can decrease also from Q0 to Q2. Let's consider as DD2. Now why the demand is decreasing? Because my income must have fallen. Negative impact upon the taste and preferences of the consumer. Price of complementary goods must have increased. Price of substitute goods must have decreased, but the price of the same commodity is not changing. So that will lead to rightward shift or leftward shift. So leftward shift in the demand curve will do what? Will cause fall in demand or decrease in demand. Same logic with supply, only thing is rather than downward sloping curve, it is an upward sloping curve. Now let's come to what kind of things that you need to know. In the examination, if they give you a question like, let's say, they say that demand is increasing and supply is remaining constant. Now they will give you the option, what happens to price and what happens to quantity. And the option will say price increases, quantity decreases, price decreases, quantity increases, price and quantity both increases, price or quantity both decreases. Now how to figure out this one? Simple. Whenever they ask you this kind of question, now if you practice little bit, you will be able to just imagine the diagram and answer the question. So whenever this kind of question, they will not straight away directly ask you, they will give you some statement like good growing condition increases the supply of strawberry and hot weather condition increases the demand for strawberry. It means both demand and supply are increasing. They have not used the phrase quantity demanded and quantity supplied because the price here is remaining constant initially. Rightward shift has happened, but after the shifting the price may not remain same. So initially it was the price which was changing, which was leading to change in quantity demanded. Now it is here the demand is changing fast or supply is changing first, and then we'll find out what happens to the price. So whenever they ask you a question like this, you simply draw the diagram. Now supply, roughly you draw it, you don't have to write price here, you don't have to write quantity here, you are doing it for yourself to find out an answer. Now this is P0 and Q0. So in the question what they have said, increase in demand. Now increase in demand, we have seen in the diagram before that increase in demand will lead to rightward shift in the demand curve. Have they mentioned anything about supply? Now if they mention anything supply remaining constant, then you will assume constant. If they don't mention anything by supply, then again you will assume it to be constant. Unless they mention something is increasing or decreasing, you will always assume it to remain constant. So rightward shift in the demand curve. Now rightward shift in my right hand side. So if I shift the demand curve right, where does it hit the old supply curve? It hits here. So when the demand curve is shifting, you find out where does it intersect with the old supply curve. When the supply curve is shifting, you find out where does it intersect with the old demand curve. So now you see here, when I drop down a line here, quantity, is it increasing or decreasing? Obviously quantity is increasing. And what happens to price? You see, when I take this line here, price is also increasing. So your option should be, what you choose is price increases and quantity also increases. If suppose they will reverse the question, demand decreases and supply remains constant. So you know one thing, the other thing will just be the opposite. It means price will also decrease and quantity will also decrease. But if you want to figure it out from the diagram, straight away same way you can do it. This is supply, this is demand, this is equilibrium price, this is equilibrium quantity, because demand and supply intersecting there. Now demand is decreasing, it means leftward shift in the demand curve. So leftward shift is my left hand side. So if I shift the demand curve towards the left, where does it hit the old supply curve at this point? When I drop down a line here on the quantity, axis, you see quantity is decreasing. When I take the line further and draw a horizontal line along the price line, price axis, you see price is decreasing. So quantity is also decreasing and price is also decreasing. So that's what we know. Now they can also ask you supply. Supply is increasing, demand remaining constant. What will be the option? They can choose any. So third one, let's take it that supply is increasing and demand remaining constant. What happens to the price and what happens to the quantity? Now when they ask you this question, simply again likewise you draw the demand curve, but instead of shifting the demand curve, you will shift the supply curve now. So let's draw the diagram here. You see, again price here, quantity here, equilibrium, demand, supply curve, demand curve, equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity. Now supply changes, demand remains same. So now this is my supply curve. Leftward shift is to my left, rightward shift to my right. What they've mentioned, increase in supply. So it means I will increase the supply. So I will shift the supply curve towards the right. When I shift the supply curve, what happens? You see, it hits the old demand curve. When the supply curve is moving, you find out where does it hit the old demand curve. When the demand curve is shifting, you find out where does it hit the old supply curve. So intersection between the demand and supply happens here. So what happens? Quantity is increasing but price is decreasing. So your option that you choose should be price will decrease and quantity will increase. If I reverse this situation, if I say supply decreases and demand remaining constant, it will just be the opposite, that is price in this case will increase and quantity will decrease. If you want to find it out through the diagram, you see here, this is the supply, this is the demand, equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity. Now supply decreases, demand remaining same. It means leftward shift in the supply curve. So leftward shift is my this left hand side. So abhi ye taraf move karega. So when I drop down, when I draw the supply curve, where does it hit the old demand curve over this point? So you see, when I drop down here on the quantity line, quantity is decreasing but price is increasing. Other way around. Correct? Got it? Now they can also ask you a question that both demand and supply increases or both decreases. So if they ask you a question, let's say fifth one, that demand is increasing and supply is also increasing. In this case, what happens? There can be three outcomes. Suppose demand increases and increase in demand is equal to supply. Sixth one, demand increases and increase in demand is more than increase in supply. Say demand increases by 20%, supply increases by 10%. Or seventh one, demand increases and increase in demand is less than increase in supply. It means supply increases more than demand. Now if they don't mention anything, they have just given a blanket question that both demand and supply increases, what happens to price and what happens to quantity? You will always choose the option that says that price remains constant or price cannot be determined. But if they give you demand increases more than supply, you will find that price will increase. Supply increases more than demand, the price will decrease. They both increase by the same margin, the price remains constant. So let's take a look here how it happens. You see here, demand and supply, they both increase. If suppose this is the price, this is the quantity, this is the supply curve, this is the demand curve, this is equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity. Now supply increases, let's say supply increases by 20%. So approximately, let's say, let me increase the supply curve to this point. Alright, this is SS1. Now since the both are increasing, where does the supply curve hit the old demand curve? That doesn't matter. Where the new supply curve will hit the new demand curve, that matters, because both are changing now. So demand is also increasing. So let me increase the demand by the same margin as I've increased the supply, that is by 20%. So when I drop down a line here, you see it will hit the supply curve, new supply curve at this point. So this is your SS1, this is your DD1. So DD1 and SS1 are intersecting at this point. So when I drop down a line here along the quantity, you see quantity is increasing, but you see the price is remaining constant, isn't it? The price is remaining constant. Why? Because the increase in the demand, supply is equals to increase in the demand. Alright. So you will choose that option that says, which says that price is constant and quantity it increases. Likewise, if demand increases more than supply, what will happen? Second one, if I increase the demand more than supply, you'll see that the price will increase and quantity, they both will increase. So if I consider this price and this as quantity, and again the same way you draw it, this is the supply curve, this is the demand curve, this is the equilibrium price, and this is the equilibrium quantity. Now demand increases more than supply, so let's increase the demand by 30% or so, or 20%. So this is the increase in demand, rightward shift in the demand curve, DD1, consider it. And supply increases by a smaller margin, let's say increase the supply by 10 or 12%. So this is your increase in supply, SS1. Now where the new DD1 and SS1 intersect at this point. So when I drop down a line here, what happens to quantity? It increases. And what happens to price? It also increases. So you will choose that particular option that says price increases and quantity also increases. And lastly, what if the supply increases more than demand? Then you will find that quantity will increase but the price will decrease. So let's say, take it here, you'll have to be very proficient in your idea. If your concept is clear, this, and you have drawn enough diagrams, this will become a permanent part of your memory. So you can just close your eyes, listen to the question, and you can imagine the diagram and you can answer the correct, choose the correct option. So supply is here, demand is here, again equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. Now in the question it says supply increases by more than demand, or increase in demand is less than increase in supply. So let's say increase the supply from by 30 or 35%, this is your SS1, and I increase the demand by a relatively smaller margin, let's say increase the demand by 10% or 12%. So this is your DD1, this is your DD1 here. So when I drop down a line here, you see what happens, quantity is increasing from Q to Q1, whereas price is decreasing from P to P1. So you will choose that particular option which says what? Which says that price is falling and quantity is rising. Clear? Okay. Now what happens here? The same way when you will think about decrease, same logic you will apply. If supply and demand decreasing by the same margin, then the price will remain constant and quantity will decrease. If demand decreases more than supply, then the price will also decrease and quantity will also decrease. And if supply decreases more than demand, then the price will increase. So eighth one, demand, you will draw it yourself as a homework, you will do it. All right. Demand decreases, decrease in demand is more than decrease in supply. Ninth one, demand decreases, decrease in demand is less than decrease in supply. And 10, demand and supply both decrease but the decrease in the same. So in the first case what will happen is that in the first case the price will fall and quantity will also fall. In the second case the price will rise and quantity will fall. In the third case the price will remain constant and quantity will fall. Now in the chat box tell me if you want me to draw any of these. Hope you're getting the idea how it all happens. All right. So they can also ask you something like demand is perfectly elastic and supply increases or supply decreases. What will be the answer in this case? So when demand is perfectly elastic, we know that it will be having a horizontal supply demand curve. We'll be having a horizontal demand curve. If suppose this is the price and this is the quantity, perfectly elastic demand curve P, if I mark it, it means it will be E equals to infinite. Now when I have to find out the equilibrium, now basically, so this is your demand curve now, perfectly elastic demand curve. Now supply curve, you see equilibrium, I can find out here is your supply curve SS. So here is your first, you can say Q, alright, QE mark kar lo isko, because this is the equilibrium quantity and P is the equilibrium price. Now perfectly elastic, it means demand is not going to change. It means perfectly elastic means the price will remain fixated at this point. So it means you cannot have a demand curve here, you cannot have a demand curve here, because in both these cases the price is changing. So it means if you move, you will move along this line only. So it means if now supply increases, there will be a rightward shift in the supply curve. So you see here, now supply curve shifts to the right. You see the interaction happens at this point. So when I drop down a line here, I know that supply is increasing from QE to QS. But is there a fall in price, increase or decrease in price? No. And if suppose supply decreases from SS1 to SS2, supply decreases, again it hits the demand curve over this point. When I drop down a line here, again quantity supplied QSS, 1 you take it, it decreases. Alright, but the price in both these cases remains same. So when the demand is perfectly elastic and supply increases or decreases, it means price will remain constant, right? But when supply increases, what will happen? Quantity QTY will also increase, and when also increase, let's write it down, and when supply decreases, then quantity will also decrease. Now the easy way out, what you need to know here, what is the easy way out? You see here, one thing you have to understand, in all these things we have written, all this thing, you have to only determine what is happening to price and not what is happening to quantity. Why I say that? Why I say that? Let's take a look here. You see here, you see, let me change the pen's color. You see here, demand is increasing, supply is increasing, so quantity is increasing here. Demand is increasing, supply is increasing, again quantity is increasing. Demand is increasing, supply is increasing, again quantity is increasing. And if I go further ahead, up, you see here, supply is increasing, demand constant, quantity is increasing. Supply is decreasing, demand constant, quantity is decreasing. So, and if you see the first one, demand is increasing, price is constant, quantity is increasing, demand is decreasing, price is constant, supply is constant, quantity is decreasing. It means, remember one thing, either when demand increases, supply remain constant, or supply increases, demand remaining constant, or they both increases. So either the demand will increase or the supply will increase or both will increase, the quantity will always increase. But the price may increase, decrease, or remain constant depending upon whether demand is increasing or supply is increasing, or they both are increasing, and whether they both are increasing by the same rate, by a lower rate, by a higher rate, what it is. So you must know that when I say demand is increasing, what happens to quantity and what happens to price? See, demand is increasing, quantity will always increase. Supply is increasing, quantity will always increase. They both are increasing, quantity will always increase. If demand is decreasing, quantity will always decrease, supply remaining constant. Likewise, supply is decreasing, demand remaining constant, again quantity will decrease. So you have to only at the end of the day figure out what happens to the price, nothing else. Alright. So you can write a note here that either demand curve or supply curve shift right, that is increase, or both shift right, that is both demand and supply increase, quantity will always increase. So what happens here? Need to only determine what happens to price. Likewise, same way you can say that demand is decreasing, supply is decreasing, or they both are decreasing. You have to simply say that simply say that the quantity will decrease, but price may increase, decrease, or remain constant. Alright. So combining the equilibrium and the shifting of the curve, you will always get at least 3 questions from there, 3 questions, 6 questions you can easily get from here. So in this 1 hour of session, I have covered 6 questions that you can fetch you 6 marks in the examination. 6 marks is not a small amount of mark. Alright. So in the tomorrow session, same time from 1 to 2, I'll be discussing another concept which again confuses a lot to this, creates a lot of confusion for the students. That is the concept of revenue, and how the concept of elasticity is going to affect the revenue of the sellers. Whether unitary elastic, more unitary elastic, or less than unitary elastic, how it is going to, the elasticity of demand is going to affect the revenue of the sellers, and what impact will it have upon the marginal revenue. So basically we'll be studying about the relationship between total revenue, marginal revenue, and average revenue. Alright, clear? So hope this session is useful to you. This video will be available on YouTube for free, like forever. You can watch it anytime and refer it to your friends as well. Share this video as much as possible.